Hey everybody, Tyler with Meeple Mountain here, bringing you another board game review. This time from our friends over at Demonic Games Gothenburg. And that's a tongue twister, it's a mouthful. And we're going to be looking today at Gotia, the Nine Kings of Solomon. This game is a tableau builder, resource collection, worker placement game where you are going to work to gain the attention of demons, demonic spirits, nine kings of hell. And you're going to be working to collect resources, gain their attention through various acts on Scribe boards, and summon them and gain pacts with them. We have set up here a 4-player game so you can get a look at all the components and how it would work as we kind of work to collect pacts, collect attention, and victory points through various placement and collection of items that we're going to be building in our little tableau. There's a lot to this game. It has a lot of moving parts, but it's really interesting and intricate in how all of the components and pieces work and interplay together. So I'm really excited to jump in and show you guys how Gotia, Nine Kings of Solomon works. So let's go ahead and jump in and get a look at some of the components. As mentioned before, Gotia, Nine Kings of Solomon is a competitive game where up to 4 players are working to collect the attention, or these coins, of demons in order to gain the most victory points by the end of the game. The way that the game ends is when there are 4, equal to the number of players or less pact cards, these purple cards, in play at the end of a round. That will signal the end of the game and scores will be tallied. The best way to probably start explaining this game is to talk about all of the ways that you can gain points, and then we'll build back from there on how you'll get those points. So again, pact cards are incredibly powerful cards that will give you lots of in-game points if you plan appropriately. Another main way that you'll gain points is through these various cards of the demons themselves. Each of these cards will have various powers that they can bestow upon you, and again, victory points that you will collect as you go throughout the game. Attention, these metal coins that are actually really nice and chunky, also are worth victory points at the end of the game. So as you go, you'll be working to build your tableau, which for each player will be a row of up to 4 cards that you will have active at any one time. All of those cards will grant you points. Pact cards that you have at the end of your tableau, and I'll show an example of this in just a moment, will give you points at the end of the game. And then any coins that you have as well, attention, will grant you victory points. So those are some of the main ways that you as a player will work to gain points. Now, this is the board of Gotia out here, in which you will be placing your followers, your very cute little screen-printed cultist meeples, out onto the board to collect various resources that you will need to then go to these 3 scribe boards that will be active at any one time to gain attention and ultimately summon a demon. The thing that I love about Gotia is that every piece on the board serves a dual purpose. And we'll talk about this as we go through the flow of the game. But effectively, each of these locations here in the middle of the board are where your workers will ultimately go to collect resources. So for instance, you can see here is a pink 2 cube. So if you placed a worker here, you would gain 2 pink cubes. In doing so, you would gain resources that you may then be able to use at the scribe boards. For instance, this rightmost scribe board for me here, it requires a blue cube for you to go there. Once you go there, you can place a worker here to collect an attention. Once all of the attention coins are off of any given scribe board, so for instance here, we would actually flip this card over as we have moved towards summoning a demon. This card would flip over, and this top world card that we had been using as the resource allocated for this card would also flip, and we would see that we have summoned a demon. And in this case, it's King Asmodee. So this demon card would cover this board, it would slide up into a separate area of the play area, and all of the cards for King Asmodee would come into play, in which case we would work as competitive players to place onto this card now with the resource allocated here to gain power cards from the king. I know, that's a lot to throw at you in one time. So let's go ahead and back up just a little bit, and I'll walk you guys through just how a play would start with 4 players, and a little bit about what you can expect as you go through the game. Again, here we have the table set up for 4 players. So at the start of the game, you have no worker meeples. They're all placed around what's called the world end of the board. To start the game off, every player, in turn order, they'll go around 3 times, pulling workers off of the board. So for instance, we might see the final setup look something like this. Now, there is a bit of strategy to where you remove your workers from at the start, because as you can see, there are some minus cubes here that will be discounts for you when you try to recruit additional workers. So let's go ahead and kind of walk through how this would look. So now every player has their 3 starting workers that they'll place out on the board. You'll take turns placing one at a time, and you'll go around until everyone has placed all of their workers. That will be the conclusion of a round in which you may, this is important, get some of your followers back to place in the following round. The options for placement are the World's End, or the World cards, where you'll gain resources, World's End cards, where you may be able to recruit an additional follower, get more workers, so your rounds are more effective, of course, or the Scribe boards themselves, assuming you can pay the allocated cost. Eventually, there will be the additional placement of the dark boards, where we saw just a moment ago you can summon demons and gain their blessings. So let's go ahead and show a few examples of what this would look like. Now, on these world cards, you'll notice there are some single cubes, there are some dual cubes, and some 3 cube areas for placement. Some of those are connected with little lines. Some are not. This is what I mentioned earlier when I talked about you getting your workers back. So for instance, if I place a worker here, and let's say here, and let's just say, for instance, that red filled these other 2 slots. At the end of the round, you're going to get back any areas that are full and have a worker on all of them. So for instance, if I was the black player, I would get this unit back because there's nothing connected. This area is full. So this unit would come back to me. Here as well, we see that all of these spaces are full. All the connected spaces are filled. So these workers would return to their respective players. But this black little worker here would not make it back because this other pink space does not have a worker on it. That area is not full. So he would actually be stuck here, locked in for another round until either I or another player placed another worker here to free these guys back up. So this is one of the really neat strategic elements of the game, in that you have to think about where you want your workers to go, the resources that you need, but also you have to strategize carefully so that you're not completely locked out of a round. That would be a crazy thing to happen, but there is a world in which you could be zoned almost entirely out of a round of play until other workers chose to place and free you up. So that's here where you'll collect resources. You'll collect those cubes into your player area when you can spend them at a later time. And don't worry, there's a lot of ways that you can spend these cubes. Next, we have these outer world, the edge of the world cards, which again I mentioned is where you'll claim workers. So for instance, if I was the black player, I could place on any space on the external area here that I have a worker still out here on the board. So for instance, I couldn't go down here because there's no worker for me. But here I could, over here, but I'd probably want to go here. This is a really good example. So when you place a worker, there's a lot of costs associated with getting another worker. The first is always going to be a coin. Remember, the coins are the attention that you're getting from the demons on the Scribe boards. We'll talk again about how to get these in just a second. The other cost is also every cube that is not covered in the row associated with that card. So for instance, right now, to get a worker here, I would need to pay a coin, 2 pink, an additional pink, 2 brown, and a brown. Now, there's a few ways those can get discounted. They could be covered by workers, your own or other people. So for instance, now I only owe a coin and 1 brown cube. The other way that these get discounted is as additional workers are pulled off. So here, you'll notice there are these little cube X marks on this card. That means that I can actually discount any of these costs that I don't want to pay by 1 cube. So here I have a 3 cube discount. So I could entirely void all the pink requirements requirements, all the brown requirements, or a mix of the two, depending on what I wanted to do. But I do always at least have to pay that attention. This would let me get my next worker, my follower, out, and ultimately once at the end of the round, once this is free, this card itself will also flip and give you a new space to go where you can collect a good chunk of resources if you've got the cost to pay in other coins or cubes. So again, you'll notice everything in Gotia flips, and I love that. Everything serves a dual purpose, which is really interesting. So we've talked about this, where you'll get cubes. We've talked about how you'll get your followers, ultimately. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the Scribe board. So again, when you place here, you can place your worker in any of the spaces that you want on the Scribe board. Again, keep in mind that these spaces are connected. So again, you could get locked into a Scribe board location as well. The cost for placing here is always 1 cube of the associated color that's shown right below it. So for instance, a blue cube, a brown cube, or a yellow cube. When you place here, you'll notice you can get resources on the Scribe boards themselves as well, which can be really, really helpful. Once you place, at the end of the round, you'll look to see who's on the Scribe boards. And for every person, starting at the top and then moving down, they will get 1 coin for each worker, so attention, that they have on this board. Now, there is a world in which there could be less coins, let's say something like this happened, than there are workers. It's like, say someone had placed earlier, gotten a few attention, there was only 1 left. In this case, the red player would get this attention and the black player would get nothing, which is very unfortunate, but it could happen. Once all of the attention, as I mentioned before, is off of a card, all the workers will return at the end of the round, then this card will flip, the world card associated with it will flip, and we'll summon that demon. Now, once all of this demon's blessing cards are gone, this card will be gone, and we will have what's called a dark board. This is, again, an additional place that you can send your worker. You'll have to pay all the associated costs, but you can gain some really powerful advantages. Now, you may notice there are 2 symbols of cubes that we haven't talked about. Out here on the board, there's always going to be just colored cubes. So there's going to be pink, yellow, blue, and brown cubes out here. There are also on the Scribe boards and certain powers for the demons, there are white cubes and black cubes. Black cubes are called darkness. Now, they're the most premium resource, and they're going to be required on some very specific cards, which we'll talk about in just a second. And they're going to be the most necessary premium resource that you have. White cubes are basically wild, and what that means is you can choose white cubes to be that number of any other colored cube beside black. So, for instance, if I went here and got 2 white cubes, I could pick 2 pink, 2 yellow, 2 brown, or 2 blue. You can't mix and match. You have to take the 2 that you want, but they can be of any color of your choice. So it gives you a little freedom, but again, remember, those black cubes, or darkness, are the most effective. So, that is the way that we'll flip these darkness boards over, is as the attention is gone, these will become darkness boards. Now, as I mentioned, the most important thing in the game is getting the pacts with the demons, because that's how the game ends, is when there's, in this case, a 4-player game, when there's 4 or less pacts at the end of the round, that is when the game will end. The way that you get them is by placing on darkness boards that have this kind of 3-card purple symbol, which allows you, I'll hold it up here, which will allow you to get a pact card, along in this case with 3 attention, which is very powerful. But it costs 8 cubes, 4 of which are darkness, so you're gonna have to plan for this. These cards will continue to build out on places that you can send your workers. So as the game progresses and you fill these Scribe boards and new ones come out, there will always be more places that your workers can go, which can be very, very impactful. But you'll have to plan on how you want to get your darkness and ultimately build towards getting pact cards. So again, if you placed a worker here, you can take your pick of any of the pact cards that are out here on the board. The pact cards all effectively grant you some form of end-game bonus for a specific aspect or element of your tableau. And again, we'll touch on the tableau specifically here in just a moment to make sure that makes sense as well. But you'll want to collect these, and you'll want to finish off your rows of player cards with these pact cards, because they're worth nothing if they're covered up by another demonic power card. So again, that's the way that you'll get pacts. The last thing to mention is there's these 6 world end cards we talked about. There's these 3 purple ones down here that are opposite the Scribe boards that are just a little bit special. They also will allow you to get a pact card if you pay 4 darkness and whatever is in the associated row. So this can be another way that you can get pact cards as the game progresses, but it is, again, pretty expensive depending on what is in the row. So hopefully this kind of quick overview of the game has given you a bit of an idea about the ways that you'll cycle through cards, summon demons, gain their blessings, and then begin to open up more places that your workers can go. The last thing to really talk about in detail is just your tableau and what that looks like. So we're going to zoom in and talk a little bit about player area and how you'll build your tableau over the course of the game. All right, let's talk a little bit about your player area. This is where you will keep any of your workers that haven't been placed, any resource cubes or attention that you've gathered from demons, and ultimately where you will build your tableau. Again, it's important to note that the tableau is how you're going to gain some asymmetric powers that are really going to give you an edge in the game, but also it's going to be the way that you finish off your tableau with your pact cards. It's going to be the predominant way that you gain points. So again, for a 4-player game, there's going to be 4 cards for each demon king that will come up throughout the game as you vie for their blessings. So when you summon a demon and try to pick from their blessings, you will get to choose some of the cards that they offer. And there's several different types of cards depending on the demon. There's a lot of red power cards. There will be some black kind of worker placement cards that are unique to your character or to your player, and then some yellow kind of neutral set collection kind of cards. So as you go, you will begin to place these cards in your tableau. And again, as I mentioned, you can have a maximum, let's use this as an example, of 4 places in your tableau active at any one time. And these can be from different kings. It doesn't matter which demon they're from, but you'll have 4 active at any given time that are kind of sitting at the front of your face. And you'll begin to build on these as you go. You'll notice that each of these cards grant you specific victory points at the end of the game. So anytime you see this symbol with numbers, that's how many victory points that card is worth at the end of the game, just static. Now again, all of these cards are unique and offer specific bonuses or powers as you go. For instance, this is a specific worker space that you can go that allows you to have an additional action, which can be incredibly powerful. Some will give you the ability to take and exchange cubes. So for instance, here you could take a darkness and turn it into any other 2 resource of your choice. So that can give you some flexibility as needed. There's lots of different options that will come up through these cards. And so as you play various games of Gotia, you're going to notice all kinds of different powers, because while there's 4 of these in the game, there are several more for each demon. So every game is going to be different based on the Scribe boards and demons that are summoned and the powers and blessings that they offer in any particular game. So now, talking about pact cards again, as you claim pact cards, you basically have to finish off a row of your tableau. Keep in mind, you have 4 slots max. So whenever you place a pact card, you can build over a pact card if you really wanted to, but they basically finish off that row of your tableau in the sense that if this card was covered up, at the end of the game, your pact card is worth nothing. While your other cards still maintain their point value, pact cards are only effective or active if they are at the top of your build. So as you go through the game, while you're gaining powerful in-game bonuses, you are also killing any of the active abilities that you may have built in your tableau. And so you have to really strategize as to what do I want to sacrifice to get this powerful pact card. And again, pact cards will give you a massive bonus at the end of the game if you've planned and prepared correctly for that right pact. But remember, each pact card is unique, so there may be another player vying for the same card as you. So there's this tension of, do I want to rush and lock this card in and make sure I get it? But in doing so, have I prevented myself from having really anywhere to place these cards? Because now if I do this, I've lost all these points that I had, and maybe I, screwed over another opponent by taking what they wanted, but I've also cost myself a lot of resources and points. And so you're always having to weigh the balances of, do I build a very powerful tableau and wait to collect pact cards later in the game, or do I try to get them earlier to make sure I get the ones that I want so that I can really spec into them and be as powerful and get the most points out of it as I can? Those kinds of decisions that you have to weigh in Gotia are really meaningful, and I really appreciated the depth that you have to evaluate and how you build your player tableau. And that is Gotia Nine Kings of Solomon. Again, players will be taking turns, continuing until those pack cards are down to equal to or less than the number of players, so whatever that is for your game, and whoever has the most points wins. It comes with this nice little score book as well that walks you through it. Again, it's coins, the attention that you got from demons, points on your blessings from the demons, pack cards that are at the end of your tableau that are active, and you get a point for every 4 resource cubes that you have left over. Whoever has the most points was the most influential, gained the most attention from the demonic kings, and is the winner. And that is everything that you need to know to play Gotia. I hope that you kind of enjoyed a little bit of a tutorial, a little bit of a walkthrough for the game, but maybe you're curious what I thought about it as I went, and I'm touched that you asked. So I really enjoyed my time with Gotia, Nine Kings of Solomon. At first, I was really curious about the theme, and so it is worth kind of raising a flag and saying this theme is a little bit sinister, it's a little bit dark. That may not be a fit for every gamer or every game group, but I would encourage you not to let that deter you from a very good game that Demonic Games Gothenburg has created here. The theme and lore and backstory is really intricate. They've done a great job replicating what's written about and talked about these kings of hell, these demon kings. And so each of the demon kings actually has like a little lore card that they've included that talks about their spirit number and a lot of interesting background. So if that is interesting to you, even the Scribe cards have flavor text that talks about kind of how they work or adds a little bit of flair to it. So this game is very immersive in that sense. And again, while that may not be appealing to everybody, I think it's really neat. I applaud Demonic Games for trying something different. And again, beyond all that, if you kind of strip away the theme, the game is really good. The mechanics are really solid. Having these cards that are variable and that cycle and that everything that flips and serves a dual purpose and that kind of ramps up as you go through the game is neat. It's really well done, and it gives the game a nice flow and pace to it. The counterpoint to that, the one negative I will say, is this game takes a little bit of time to set up. It's not terrible, and the rulebook does a great job laying everything out and walking you through it, so props to you there again, Demonic. You've got a great rulebook. That's really good, but the game does take a little bit of time to shuffle all the cards, get everything out, make sure there's no duplicate demons out here, and make sure the world cards are out, and then getting all the demon blessings set up and the Scribe cards. It just takes a second. It's not bad. I'm probably being dramatic, but that was one thing that I know. I was like, I don't love that. But overall, once you get it set up, the game flows super quick. Everybody's turns make sense, and you have to just evaluate some tough choices on your actions, and I love that. I love that there are multiple paths to victory that make sense that you have to think through. Do I want to gain resources and really dump into the Scribe boards to get that attention, to get demons summoned, to get blessings? Do I want to free up all my workers so that my turns are better, my rounds are longer than my opponents? Do I want to start getting a tableau that's built that's really powerful? Do I want to rush packed cards and try to end the game earlier, get a leg up on people that way? There's some really good, challenging thoughts that you have to think through in Gotia, and I really appreciated that and enjoyed it. So overall, I would give Gotia, Nine Kings of Solomon, a 7.5 out of 10. This is a really good game that I think probably people have overlooked for the theme or for the fact that maybe they're a newer company that you haven't heard of. But I would encourage you to step out of your comfort zone and give Gotia a try. It's a really solid game. You're not going to be disappointed. There's some really nice elements here, like these chunky metal bits. I love metal coins, so good on you guys there. Very nice, cute little screen printed cultist meeples that add some flavor and pop to the game. Dedication to lore and making the theme immersive, so props there. And really just quality gameplay. I think you're going to be pleased with your experience with Gotia, and so I was really pleasantly surprised, and I think you will be too. So I hope that you enjoyed this little walkthrough and my thoughts and review. I hope that it made sense and that you are encouraged to check out a new title from a newer company and give it a try. But I thank you for your time. I hope that you'll continue to turn to Meeple Mountain for all of your board game content needs. And as always, happy gaming. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Check out some of our other Meeple Mountain content. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.